If your child is putting in the effort, but tuition still is not moving the needle, you are not alone. Sometimes the problem is not motivation or teaching quality. It is the type of support. That leads to the real question. When is tuition the right fit? And when should you look at educational intervention or clinical therapy instead? Once you know what each type of support is designed to do, the decision becomes much clearer and much less overwhelming. Tuition is designed to reinforce school learning. It helps a child revisit concepts, practice skills, and prepare more confidently for classwork or exams. It usually works best when a child can grasp the teaching, but needs more repetition, better revision habits, or extra support applying what they already understand. In other words, tuition strengthens performance when the learning pathway is basically intact and the child mainly needs more guided practice. It can be a great fit for a child who understands the maths method but needs to build speed and accuracy through regular practice. It can also help with things like organizing essay structure, revising for tests, or tightening up skills that improve with repetition. But tuition has limits. If a child cannot access learning in the usual way, more explanation and more worksheets may not solve the real problem. The difficulty may involve attention, processing speed, working memory, or language skills that affect how information gets in and stays in. When those deeper barriers are in the way, the child is not just behind on content. They may be struggling with the mechanics of learning itself. That is where educational intervention comes in. It focuses on how your child learns, not only what chapter or topic they are studying this week. Instead of simply reteaching school content, this kind of support targets the underlying skills that make learning more manageable and more effective. The goal is to build the child's learning capacity so everyday school demands become easier to handle over time. Educational intervention may support skills like working memory, executive function, and processing speed that shape how smoothly a child can learn. It can also target phonological skills, organization, and learning strategies that help a child follow through more independently. Imagine a child who tries hard every day, but still forgets instructions, loses track halfway through tasks, or needs constant prompting to get started. In that case, more practice alone may not be enough. Support that builds attention, memory, or planning skills may make a bigger difference. Clinical therapy is different again. It supports areas of development that may affect communication, movement, regulation, or everyday functioning. This may include speech and language therapy, occupational therapy, or support for motor skills, sensory needs, and developmental delays. The focus is not just school performance. It is strengthening foundational abilities that influence how a child participates in learning and daily life. When those foundational skills improve, a child may find it easier to sit, listen, communicate, manage transitions, and take part in classroom routines. That support can have a ripple effect on learning because school becomes more accessible before academics are even added on top. Here is the simplest way to compare them. Tuition reinforces school learning, educational intervention builds learning processes, and clinical therapy supports developmental foundations. The best option depends on what your child is showing you, not on which label sounds most familiar. A common assumption is that if a child is struggling, they simply need more tuition, but more of the same support is not always better support. If the root issue sits in memory, attention, processing, or development, repeating the same academic approach can leave everyone feeling stuck. Some warning signs are slow progress despite real effort, difficulty following multi-step instructions, and poor retention from one day to the next. You may also notice emotional stress, avoidance, or a child who seems capable but cannot consistently show what they know. Sometimes the clearest clues are emotional. A child may lose confidence, become anxious about school, or shut down when homework begins. Resistance is not always defiance. It can be a sign that learning has become exhausting, confusing, or discouraging. A child can be bright, curious, and highly motivated, and still run into hidden bottlenecks that interfere with learning. Needing targeted support does not mean a child is not capable. It means we need a clearer view of how they learn best. When we talk about cognitive bottlenecks, we mean roadblocks in the mental skills that support learning every day. That might include attention, memory, processing speed, or language organization. If those systems are overloaded, schoolwork becomes much harder than it looks. When support is matched well, things start to make sense. Tuition reinforces learning that is already accessible. Educational intervention builds the skills that make learning easier to manage and retain over time. And clinical therapy strengthens the developmental foundations that support participation, communication, and readiness for learning. A simple way to think about it is this: if your child understands the material but needs reinforcement, tuition may be enough. If the struggle is in remembering, organizing, processing, or working independently, it may be time to consider intervention or therapy. The good news is that you do not have to figure this out by trial and error on your own. Assessment can bring clarity by showing what is really getting in the way and where support is most likely to help. A cognitive assessment can be a very practical starting point when the picture feels unclear. It helps map out a child's strengths, identify areas of challenge, and show which support priorities deserve attention first. That means decisions become less about guesswork and more about choosing support that actually fits your child. A good assessment can reveal a child's learning profile, areas of processing difficulty, and practical recommendations for what to do next. It does not just describe a problem, it helps connect the pattern you are seeing to the kind of support that makes sense. Assessment is not about putting a child in a box. It is about understanding them more accurately. When you know where the real strain is, support can become more targeted, more efficient, and much more compassionate. When the support mismatch continues for too long, the cost is often more frustration, more wasted time, and more energy spent without real progress. Over time, that can chip away at confidence and make school feel heavier than it needs to be. When support is matched earlier, families often gain clearer direction, better use of time and resources, and more focused progress. Most importantly, the child gets help that fits how they learn, which supports stronger long-term outcomes. If you're feeling guilty, uncertain, or worried that you should have done something sooner, please be gentle with yourself. Seeking clear answers is not overreacting. It is a thoughtful step toward giving your child the support they truly need. So let's bring it together. Tuition is for practice and reinforcement, intervention is for learning processes, and therapy is for developmental needs. Once you understand that difference, it becomes much easier to ask the right next question for your child. Try not to look at grades alone. Notice how your child is coping, how much support they need, and whether learning is becoming easier or harder over time. Those patterns often tell you far more than a single score ever could. If you are unsure which path is right, the Cognitive Development Learning Center can help you start with assessment and guidance. Getting the right support begins with understanding what your child truly needs. Every child deserves support that fits, not just more support, but the right kind of support. When you understand the need more clearly, you can move forward with confidence and compassion. Thanks for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like, share, and subscribe. For further questions and inquiries, you may contact us at 65646533 or 8614-7651, or visit www.cognitive.com.sg.